Just, yeah. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. If you could all please take your seats, we will shortly begin our discussion. Very good, thank you. And I would also ask our panelists to take their seats if they can. No.
This is good.
So again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our high-level panel on strengthening Europe's security in wartime. I'm Daniel Berg, the ALDE Vice President from Hungary and Chair of the ALDE Security and Defense Working Group. We have a distinguished panel here today. And of course, the issue is sadly topical, as February 24th, 2022, not only a day that will live in infamy, but also one that completely redrew the security dynamic of Europe and, dare I say, the world as well. The bravery and tenacity of the Ukrainian people, who are now fighting for European values, has allowed them to beat back the first invasion, but we must not forget that the war is still raging. Fortunately, military aid to Ukraine now includes not only ammunition, but tanks, air defense, and fighter jets. But hopefully, there's more we can do. And in the meantime, the European countries have seemed to realize that the old Latin adage is still true, that if you want peace, you must prepare for war. In fact, Germany, for example, defined for the last 30 or so years by its pacifism, has set aside 100 billion euros for defense capacity building. And of course, for the first time, NATO has expanded, making Finland the 31st member of the alliance, hopefully soon to be followed by Sweden as number 32. And now we look at the most important questions of this topic, namely, how do we offer better support to our Ukrainian allies? What will the future of European security look like? And how can we work towards an autonomous and self-sufficient European defense mechanism? And now please allow me to introduce, in order of seating, our distinguished panel. First and foremost, the Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration of Ukraine, Olha Stefanishyna, welcome. Kajsa, Ollongren. Kajsa, Ollongren, Minister of Defense of the Netherlands from D66, welcome. Aušrinė Armonaitė, the Minister for Economy and Innovation of Lithuania from Freedom Party. Hello. And last but not least, Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, Member of Parliament and Chairwoman of the Defense Committee of the Bundestag. Welcome. Let us begin then by short introductions from our panelists. Olga, I give you the floor, please.
Thank you so much. I think that the major contribution on my side would be the lessons learned from this war so far. And the major lesson is learning by doing, only by our actions. We managed to learn the new lessons, how to stay more resilient, how to stay more confident, how to realize the very fact that our values is something we need to fight for, not only cherish, not only to respect, but also to fight for. And I think that this is not where we were before 24th of February. And I'm particularly proud with every action which have been taken collectively by democratic world, by individually, by every state of Europe and across Atlantic, and the decisions taken. Because the major calculation or miscalculation of Russia was in two elements. First, they knew nothing about Ukrainians while they were thinking that they know everything about us. So they failed the 3 days war. And the second thing they were confident about, that there will now be unity over taking actions to stand with Ukraine, to support Ukraine militarily, to impose financial pressure, to impose sanctions, to speak about the justice for those who face the consequences of war. And definitely nobody would even imagine the situation that President Putin will be subjected to arrest warrant by International Criminal Court. And this seemed not possible. And this has been a major miscalculation, luckily. Here we are, the lessons we learned, the decisions we have taken for Ukraine, for the unity of Europe, not against Russia, but for ourselves, has been all the successes. First, the military support decision from European Union. First ever decision taken not even for member states, but for the third country to provide financial support to ensure that member states can provide military support to Ukraine. Now discussion on the three-layer defense policy of European Union and joint defense procurement. Rammstein format established to coordinate broader efforts in terms of military assistance, military planning, and making sure that we are not defeated on the battlefield. And thirdly, not less important, but I would say the most important decision taken, let's say, for European Union is the decision to grant Ukraine a candidate status. It's not something related to military, it's not something related to ending the war. But let's bring ourselves back to the time back in May 2022. Things didn't seem so clear. We didn't had heard the message that all EU member states, all allies will stand with Ukraine as long as it needed. Nobody knew when the war will be over. Nobody knew what will the new day bring to us. And on 23rd of June, we heard the unanimous yes to Ukraine to become a member of European Union. The message that all 27 will be standing with Ukraine as long as it is needed. And we were given the clear perspective on what the future is. And this future is for Ukraine, peaceful, restored, and brought back to European family. These are the lessons learned, but we should build on it. We are far from strategic vision of the future security architecture, but we are very close to start shaping it. And I think it's also time for some decisions to be taken. When we're talking about many years of strategic ambiguity towards Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations, it's one of the decisions which have been for years speculated by Russian Federation. We have heard the message that this is no time to irritate Russia, this is no time to flash back to their manipulations. But what we see right now, all of this aggressive policy has led to only a stronger alliance, to alliance which has invited 2 new member states to join, which is Finland and Sweden. The borders with the Russian Federation, the alliance borders of Russian Federation increased for a couple of thousands of kilometers. And it's high time to take the next steps and next decisions, because the practice of this 1 year and 2 months has shown that whenever decisions are taken in our interest, in the interest of our unity, our security, our democracies, they are successful. And we, of course, hope that with the very strong efforts taken to prepare for massive counteroffensive operations and actions on the battlefield these days, with the massive military support and ability to protect Ukrainian civilian population by air defense, we need to think strategically and ahead. We need to build the secure Europe. We need to make sure that the security guarantees are not provided only to Ukraine, but to all of us through strengthened defense capacity, through coordination of defense industries, through making us more capable in security dimension, but of course through taking finally political decisions on bringing Ukraine to a family of European and Euro-Atlantic defense architecture, and recognizing probably finally the obvious that there is no new security architecture without Ukraine. And rest assured, I'm sure politically and militarily, we have already proven a long time ago that we are not only capable, but we are committed to defend all the values, all the pride that we have been praising for so many years. And it is in the spirit of every Ukrainian, not a president, not a members of the parliament, of the government. We all speak on behalf of our people. And to conclude, probably I would only say the words of gratitude for all the victories we've already gained over this period of time, but more to come. And then let's stay concentrated and ready for new actions. Thank you.
Minister, please.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Olga, for your very inspiring words. And I think what we're seeing, what you're doing, the fight that Ukraine is fighting, the Ukrainian soldiers, but actually all Ukrainians, we really feel that it is also our war, because we know that you're fighting not only for yourselves and for the freedom of your country, but also for European values. So it's more or less our common dream of having a Europe with these shared values. And that's why we're very strongly motivated in the Netherlands and the other European countries to continue to support Ukraine with every mean that you need. So that means military, from weapons to training, the sanctions of Russia, and also the accountability, where the Netherlands has also stepped forward, because we are committed to bringing those responsible to justice in time. And this momentum is important. It's important in Europe, because we have not talked for a long time about European defense and our own security and our own safety. And for a long time, we relied on the United States for that, relied on NATO for that, and many of us are NATO countries. But Europe has to do more. We have to care about our security. And if we care about our security, we have to increase our defense budgets, and we have to intensify our cooperation on defense. And that's why I've set an agenda which is about defense industry. It has to be more European. It now has a very national focus, but we have to have a European focus. We have to have what we have on the internal market side. Why don't we have it on the defense industry? That would make us a strong player. We have to have cooperation in the operational field. We have to have more interoperability between our armed forces. And that is something that takes time. We have a strong integration between the Netherlands and Germany. It's taken decades to get there, but it's very strong and it works. And we have to do more of the same with other countries and prioritize this. And I feel it's also very important that the EU and the NATO cooperate and that we use the strengths of both organizations to get a more safe Europe and to be stronger in a world that is coping with the Russian Federation, but also with other threats in the Sahel, in the Middle East, in Asia. It's not a secure world at this moment. And last but not least, wars change relations between countries, but it doesn't change geography. And neither did Brexit. So I feel it's very important, especially now with all these threats, that we reach out to each other from the European Union to the UK and vice versa, and try to find the right way forward to address security issues and not look back anymore, but look forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Minister?
Well, good afternoon. Us Lithuanians, we were always cautious about Russian aggression, but not only from the military point of view, but also European dependence on Russian energy resources, oil and gas. And you know, through those pipelines that are now under the Baltic Sea, it was not only Russian gas that were being channeled to Europe. It was also corruption, nepotism, and all these so-called values that Russia and Putin's regime is living in. So building more independence from Russian resources, natural resources, is something that will strengthen us as Europeans. And you know, Greta Thunberg from Sweden was actually right. It's not only good for planet, but is also good for our security and independence and economy. But it's not only Russia we have to think about strengthening European security. It's also China and our technological dependence on China. You know, strengthening our domestic security capacities is also bringing back semiconductor production to Europe, bringing back biotech to Europe, and all these value chains having domestically within the European Union and Europe. Second point, we have to think not only about how to fight Putin, but also we have to plan the reconstruction of Ukraine. And it has to be done now. We don't know when the war will end. We don't know when the ceasefire will be there. We have to act now because there are children with no schools today. There are towns with no water supply today. There are logistical infrastructure that is destroyed, and it forbids business to conduct business with the European companies, Ukrainian businesses. So we have to also act on the reconstruction of Ukraine now.
Thank you for that holistic view, Chairwoman.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and it's a great honor to be here. And it's wonderful to talk with 4 ladies about security. Because yeah, the last 1,000 years, only men were talking about security, and you could see what happens. Excuse me. So it's a really hard moment, especially for Ukraine. And so first of all, thank you very much. Your country shows what people could do if there is a terrible attack. And I visited your country for 2 times, and I will travel next month again. And it's very important to see what happens. And it's really, it's a special situation to talk to all women because all men are in the fight. So we have to wake up. Europe has to wake up. And we remember that this is not the first attack. 8 years ago, their first attack from Russian, and what happens in Europe. And I tell you the truth, we have a small, really little discussion in Germany. Of course, everybody was not happy about it, but that's it. And it's time to stand up, to wake up. And in the morning, we are talking about together. We make together this and together this. But first of all, ladies and gentlemen, we have to look for a security house of Europe, because otherwise, the discussions about economic future, about many topics about future are nothing. First of all, the house must be safe. And it's very important to show Russia, to show China that Europe is able to be resilient and to be ready for fight for our values, and not only in words, to prepare the army. And I think it would be very interesting to see every country has its own army. That's okay. But in the future, we have to look forward to have a European kind of army, to build it up. Everybody can join it. It's not a must. But I think it's very, very important, and even to be a strong part in NATO. And so let's do it. It's, I mean, it's a challenge. I know it. But I think I'm hopeful that the time is now the right moment.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks. And in this next section, I would like to ask each of you one dedicated question related to your expertise. First, Madam Deputy Prime Minister, I'd like you to share with us how is the West, how is NATO, how are the European countries doing in providing aid to Ukraine militarily and diplomatically, and what can we do more?
Thank you so much for this question. I partially addressed that. Of course, we are far from being fully insured with everything we need on a battlefield, but it's not because somebody is not delivering on its commitments. It's because that we are again learning by doing. And when we say that we need tanks and armored vehicles and fighter jets for yesterday, and we claim that this support is not there, the decision is not there, it's not because we're not satisfied, it's because we really know why we need that on a battlefield. But on the other side, we understand that we are learning by actually taking every decision individually by country by country basis. It didn't come for granted, the decisions which has been taken within European Peace Facility. So we've been learning by taking action, by prioritizing the needs, by working individually with the member states, by coordinating. It takes time. But at this moment, I think that we are very well coordinated, very well structured, and we can not only accelerate the military support, and we can now concentrate on the specific types of needs that we have. It's like when we're talking about the tank coalition, and there is a German decision on tanks for Ukraine, and now this is the jet coalition. So we now can concentrate on a very specific things we are working on together and advocating for. But on the other side, all of this accomplishments allows us to be more strategic. And that what brings a lot of hope to me, the discussion which are now taking place at the level of the European Union, and what Madam Minister was referring to, is that we are far from identifying the date of Ukraine's victory. We are far from naming any horizon of bringing back the full stability into Europe. So we understand that regardless the development on the battlefield, and hopefully the successful one of this year and the next year, we are now in a position to plan for a decade ahead, at least, and transforming and forming policy in defense industry, joint defense procurement and strategic procurement, protection of critical infrastructure technologies. These are not the areas of competition. This is the elements of our resilience, of our stability, and of course, first and foremost, Ukraine should be granted as security by strengthening our defense capacity in a strategic way. We need to think ahead what comes in half a year time, in 1 year time, although we know what is coming the day tomorrow. This is a huge accomplishment we already have together. We were not there a year ago, Minister knows that. So we were on a phone every 24 hours, and the horizon of our planning was 24 hours. Now we are in a very good shape in terms of managing the processes, but to become stronger, to overcome, and to, let's say, set in stone the security in Europe, we need to be strategic, and we need to plan from 1 to 10-year perspective. And I definitely believe that new era of policy in sphere of defense industry formed at the level of the EU is the future of this process, the future of our resilience. And this, in fact, the major security guarantee for Ukraine at this stage, which will ensure sustainable investments into Ukraine's defense industry, into Ukraine's defense capacity, and lack of black holes, let's say, in this geopolitical reality. But for all of this, we need to overcome the enemy and withdraw Russian soldiers from our territory. And for this, we need to make sure that our armed forces are safe, concentrated, and able to accomplish their missions. And for that, they need fighter jets to cover what they do. So first and foremost, let's win on the battlefield, let's get everything we need, and let's be strategic in what we're doing, and we should do it in parallel.
Thank you. Minister Ollongren, if we look at the diplomatic aspect of strategy, how did you see the accession process for Finland to NATO, and what implications can be drawn for Sweden's application? And further, do you think there are more prospective members in the wings?
Well, I'm sure you're not asking me that question because I have both Finnish and Swedish roots, but I do, as a matter of fact. I hope it doesn't prejudice me, because I think it's very important that Finland is already in, and Sweden, it's a question of time and hopefully weeks before they will also officially join NATO. And I think it's extremely significant. You only have to look at a map to see why, because it will put strategic depth into NATO, and NATO is a defensive alliance. It's a military alliance meant for collective defense. And if you look at the northeastern part of NATO, we're simply going to be stronger with Sweden and Finland in. Second, both Sweden and Finland are very, I would say, resilient countries when it comes to knowing about the threat of Russia. It's very deep in their societies because it's always been there. Finland has this very, very long border, as Olga correctly said, with Russia. It has the experience of war with Russia, and Sweden, although being neutral and non-aligned after that for a very long time, has always faced the threat of Russia being close. So that means that the societies are very resilient. And if you look at the Netherlands, we're in a much better place, you could say, surrounded by neighbors who are not going to attack us and who've been our allies for a very long time. But that has made our society a bit less resilient. So we have to work on that resilience, which is not only military resilience, but it's also societal resilience. So, but I think we talk a lot about 24th of February last year, but it was really the trigger for the Finns and the Swedes to change their minds. I mean, some of our political parties here today had already changed their minds before that, for instance, after the Crimea, seeing the threat from Russia coming. But I mean, the population and some of the parties that were still not there, that convinced them that they were not in a safe place, that they need the cooperation within NATO to be safe. So I really very much welcome Finland and Sweden into NATO. It will make them safer, it will make NATO stronger. And I think the real message from this is the world is not safe. The world it's not going to be safe, even after Ukraine has won the war, and we've found the right place for Ukraine inside the European Union, in the NATO family. That still for decades we have to work on our resilience. We have to be a strong alliance as NATO, and we have to face multiple threats in the other sides of the world. China was mentioned, the digital AI developments were already mentioned. So there's lots of work to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Slightly provocative question for you, Madam Minister. We talk a lot about self-sufficiency when we talk about security and defense, but when you look at the armaments we're buying, the military technology we're buying, it's mostly American. A great chunk of it is Korean. How can we go towards a more robust and self-sufficient European defense industry?
Well, that's a great question. And first of all, we must acknowledge that us Europeans, for many years, treated military business as somewhat gambling industry. When I became a minister, what I have found, different kind of restrictions, heavy restrictions on military companies to start up, to scale up, to innovate, to research, and so on. So number one job for us is to review those restrictions and basically remove them, so that our own companies could grow. That's a number one important thing. Second thing is, of course, other restrictions, not regulatory, but financial restrictions. There are so many restrictions regarding access to funding. We have to talk to the banking system and players within the banking system, how we could help these businesses to get access and to scale and grow. And last but not least is research and development. Europe is great in this. And we have to, we have to invest more. And as I said in my initial intervention, well, we have to bring back the smart industries back to Europe from China, from elsewhere in the world. Let's build domestic capacities. And research and development, innovation is crucial when it comes to military military spending, because it's smart weaponry that will win this war. Not heavy, but smart. This has to be our goal.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, the term of the day in Germany is Zeitenwende. What does this mean for Germany, and what does it mean for Europe?
Yeah, it's a German word, excuse us. Anyway, yes, it means that we have to start thinking totally in a new way. I mean, after 1990, not only in Germany, all over Europe, everybody thought now the paradise will be there. And it was wonderful to see how Europe grew, that we are partners, that we are really one unit. But first of all, it's a question of military and a question of budget. So that we need more money to protect Europe. And you have to explain it to the people. And you have even to explain it to colleagues in the parliament who are looking for education, for other big topics like the climate change. But we need, first of all, more money. But Zeitenwende is more than to have a modern army. It's a question of economic. Who will be in the future our partners for dealing? Because you could see that we were looking to Russia and we were totally dependent in questions of energy. I mean, it's really, okay, we have to think about it in a new way. So to see where are our friends all over the world? What will happen with China? You see, we have big companies in the heart of Europe, and their profit, they make it in China, 40–50%. So we have to be close together in Europe. We have to find new markets. So Zeitenwende is the third thing. You have to explain people in Europe. You have to explain the situation. I mean, there are nearly 20–25%. They are astonished and they are say, come on, it's a war in Ukraine. Where is Ukraine? It's far away. It's not our war. It is our war. And you have to explain why we have to think in a new way. We have to explain that we need young people, young women, young men joining the army. And so Zeitenwende means you have to find a new mindset. And yes, the reason and that we are talking about this situation shows that the mindset started now and here.
Thank you very much.
Good.
With that, we conclude the moderated questions, and now we will turn to the audience. I would like to ask you three things. Please keep it short, make sure it's a question, and also identify the speaker you would like to ask the question from. We have about 15 minutes. Some people have to catch flights, so we will begin, and I will take as many as we can. Let's try to collect some. And hands in the air if you have a question. I see, I'm sorry, I don't really see you, but I see a hand back there. Can one of my colleagues help with a mic, please, for the audience?
Hello, my name is Benedicte. I'm from Venstre, the Norwegian party. I was also a member of the Norwegian Defense Commission, which turned in our report the 3rd of May this year. And thank you all for this really interesting panel. My question goes to the whole panel, but if I had to choose, I can also make it directed to Germany. How do you view China's role on new disruptive technologies, and how do we follow the technology race between US and China? Thank you.
Thank you. That's the only question we have so
Yes,
far. So if you'd
maybe
like
Berg,
to.
yeah. Yes, maybe you could you ask again? It was a little bit, you know, the sound
Noisy.
is a
It
little
was
bit
not really clear.
Yes.
Your view on China's role in developing
role.
new disruptive technology and how we follow the technology race between US and China. Thank you.
Shall I do
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. I mean, this is a discussion. We could discuss it for the next 3 hours about the situation. I think when Russia attacks Ukraine, before Putin traveled to China, without green light from China, he wouldn't attack Ukraine. And this shows that China is looking forward how resilient is Europe. And I'm sure that not only Russia, also China is surprised about the power of Europe, about standing together, and even that NATO is growing up now. So the thing will be that in this moment, a very important thing is that during the meeting G20, the Chinese president and the American president, US president, stand together, even they are in a totally different systems, to tell the Russian, don't think about it, to use the nuclear bomb. I think this was really important that in this case, even countries who are in a totally different situation are talking about. So I think that China has to know that we have power, that we are looking forward to be that we are not only in a, how could I say, that we trade with China, but we also looking for our values. And the question you could see when President Macron was in China, I think it was hard to see that he was talking not in a European way, just in this moment. Because I think it's a difficult situation to be in China and to say that we have, that Europe, it's not good if Europe is very close to the United States. I think we have values, we have to fight for it, we have to go for it. And the United States are our friends, but we need more impetus for our own power. I think will be. I try to answer it. I know this is a really big issue.
And I hear that. Thank you. And there was another comment.
Just a very quick comment. When it comes to disruptive technologies in China, the US-Chinese fight, of course, we have to, first of all, think of ourselves, about our domestic capacities. But there is also one more thing that is called ally shoring. The US is our allies. There are more countries in this world that are our friends. South Korea, Japan, others. Let's work with them. It's not only China that is smart in the Southeast Asian region. There are more countries. So let's not forget our allies in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I saw some hands. We're going to, I think, collect a few questions in one round, and then please identify who you're asking the question from. First, we have here the Lib Dems, Sven Gossel, and the gentleman in the middle who I can't see properly. So please, in that order.
Good afternoon. David Chalmers from the UK Liberal Democrats. My question is regards to, we hear a lot about European cooperation on security. How do you envisage that sort of happening, and to make sure that the countries like the UK are included?
And this is for which panelist?
For all, basically. Whichever one wishes to answer it.
Okay, next question, please.
Yes, a question for for Olga and for the colleague from the Netherlands. First of all, Olga, you talked about reconstructing Ukraine. I think we should not talk only about infrastructure, schools and hospitals, but about the economy that is currently leaving the Ukraine to produce their goods in other countries. because it will be.
Sorry, could we have the question, please?
Yeah,
We really are quite short.
Is what. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I mean, I'm not sure everybody gets it. So the question is really, how would you envision the European Union to help that part to rebuild the economy rather than just the infrastructure on that matter? And for the Dutch colleague, I guess the Europe altogether spends more money than the US on military. So the question is really, how get this more effective? How can we build, as you're the country without any weapon industry mainly, is there a way to build a sort of a competitive situation like in the US, which drives down the expenses and makes the whole thing more efficient?
Thank you. And then the last question in the middle here. Sorry, it's really difficult to see you, so identify yourself. Sure.
Question for anyone who would like to take it. We talked about Russia and China. I wonder if you could speak to what you think are the steps that Europe can take, including the UK, to address security issues to the south of Europe, in the greater Middle East and North Africa.
Very good. So that'll be hard in a minute, but let's start with the specific question to the minister on the reconstruction of Ukraine.
Well, as I understood it, I think the question to me, directed to me, was mostly on the European defense industry. And
Yes,
how can
I
we
think
make
both
it
of you had
stronger?
one, so let's start with reconstruction and then we go to Europe.
Right. Well, first of all, I agree. The reconstruction of Ukraine has to be part of the integration of Ukraine into the European Union. That's simple, and it has to start sooner rather than later. And I think Ukraine is a country that has a lot to bring to Europe. Because it's a big country, it's proven that it's very creative, it's tech savvy, so it's not only us bringing things to Ukraine, it's Ukraine bringing things to us, and we'll just have to work on a, for us, completely new situation. We've never done a reconstruction of this size since the Second World War. On the European defense industry, where also Ukraine can play an interesting part because of the war experience, in a way, it's very simple. The European defense industry is completely national-oriented, and we have to change that. We would have a much stronger defense industry if we would have a European defense industry, if we would have European standards, for instance. If the development of a new tank, which is something that France and Germany have been working on for years, would actually take next steps, not only talking about whose industry is going to do what, but realizing that if we do it together, we will be a global player on these issues. If we don't do that, we will continue to have fragmentation of all capabilities that all our military are using right now. And that's not in our European interest. And I think for a long time, European defense industry has been driven by budget cuts. But now it's going to be driven by investments, long-term investment, long-term procurement, and long-term orders, simply because we need it. And so this is the time to do this. But I know as a defense minister, it's very much stuck in a lot of red tape and a lot of things that we're used to doing in a certain way. And it needs political will, and it needs political decisions in Brussels to do this. And it needs courageous ministers and governments to overrule their industry on this, and to overrule even their own armed forces on this, because otherwise it will never happen. But it's absolutely necessary for our own security to do this. And if I could end by a few words on, thank you, the gentleman from the Lib Dems, I think it's something we both have to do. It's on the European side and on the UK side, really reach out to each other. And I think that even this UK government has started that by saying we want to join the PESCO project on military mobility, for instance, which is very important. It's starting. But it does have to come from both sides. But the UK is, on security issues, a very important European partner, and we shouldn't let the fiasco of Brexit take that away from us. Thank you.
Thank you. And then moving on to reconstruction, perhaps if the Deputy Prime Minister would also like to address it as well.
Yes, one more point. Well, to help Ukraine, it's not only we do not only have to, support it from the military perspective, but we also have to maintain business relations, trade. And it's not only grain, but also basically everything we trade with Ukraine. Furniture, wood, other materials. We have to, maintain our economy. And infrastructure, logistics is important for that. Not only seaports, but also railways, roads, anything. That is important. Digital infrastructure. Actually, I am impressed how during this harsh war, Ukraine maintains its digital infrastructure in full operation. We have to help our friends, secure that. One more thing, us decision makers in Europe, we also have to think of ways how to help our businesses help Ukraine. As for Lithuania, we have worked through schemes of insurance, other different kind of financial schemes that encourages our businesses enter Ukrainian market, or at least remain, if they were there previously, remain their operations in Ukraine's market. So it's not only infrastructure, but it is important, and also other financial schemes that could be in place and help our businesses help Ukraine.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to be short as I'm in this, let's say, reconstruction business for a pretty long time, and we should split some of the things. Just yesterday, overnight, we had a missile attack which destroyed a hospital in Dnipro. And they're like official statistics, but there's something behind official statistics, and it's far from very nice numbers. So it was a deliberate attack to a medical facility, and it needs to be urgently restored because it's in the eastern Ukraine. Those wounded, those who need help, those who need medical treatment, they need a place to be treated. And this requires urgent reconstruction, urgent rebuilding, and that what we're talking when we mean infrastructure. Speaking on a broader perspective, there's some things that we should repeat to ourselves all the time. Ukrainian economy is extremely competitive. We managed to reorient our market back in 2014 from Russia to fully operating to EU markets less than in 1 year. Less than in 1 year, all Ukrainian economy has been reoriented. Now we are top 20 importers into EU, and we remained in this position throughout the full-scale war.
Yes.
So this is very important, and when we're talking about reconstruction, it's about the investments, and most of the investments were mobilized by the countries who are the candidates to join the EU. So it's not about credit, loans, and etc. It will be there, but it's about your companies who will come to Ukraine to reconstruct our country. It is your companies who will invest into green technologies, and it is our companies who will also compete on this market. So I think it's something even which goes beyond the Marshall Plan. This is the new economic reality, and I'm sure that we are ready for that, and Ukraine will definitely not be the last one to play the game here.
Yes, please.
Yes, just 2 sentences. I think I don't want to be the party pooper, but I think a very important thing is to recreate Ukraine, and there are many startups thinking about what could we do, which country could help which part of Ukraine. I think this would be great, but the truth is that after Ukraine wins this war, and Ukraine will win for sure, then it's really important to fight against corruption. It's really important. It's a chance for your country, and it's very important to become part of European Union. And I know that young people has a discussion about it. And so we look forward in an optimistic way, but I think it's important to explain this also.
Yeah, and where there's a word corruption, I always have to dig in, because that's what we are doing right now. We're not waiting, I mean, until the war is over, until some conditions are there. We understand that this is necessary for us. And you have seen already radical steps done by ourselves in that regard, and you will see more next week. And we're not putting it somewhere on the shelf. It is there, and this trust and the leverage of understanding and zero tolerance on Ukrainian side should be there right now. So thank you for mentioning and for giving me the opportunity to react.
Thank you. Thank you. We have 5 minutes on the clock. I have one question still. If you allow, I'll summarize it as security considerations beyond Russia and China, Middle East, Africa, so on. So we have that one. And if we could have the last question of the day from my colleague Sal Brinton, please.
Thank you, all four of you. I think you've given us ample evidence that Europe's security in wartime has been strengthened over the last year, but I wondered if you might have a brief comment on the impact of a possible re-election of Donald Trump. Is Europe strong enough to withstand whatever nonsense he might throw?
Thank you, Sal. An easy question to end with, I see. Shall we start with Trump? Or should we start with... let's start with Trump. Who'd like to...
Yes. Yes, it's of course, it's a very good question, because unfortunately, it is something that we have to consider, because it might just become reality. And I would say, no, we're not there yet, but we are in a better place than we were before. And actually, the Trump government that we did have, Trump administration that we did have, made us realize just that. And I think that is why the step forward in Europe that's been taken since then, and that's become even bigger since the full-scale war in Ukraine, is significant. I mean, yes, we must trust also in institutions, and NATO is also an institution. It did survive Trump, and as a matter of fact, some people say that the only thing that Trump was right about was about Europe's engagement in NATO. It needed more. But we're doing that now, we're living up to that now, and we have a strategic compass in the European Union. So we are, for the collective defense, investing in NATO, but for other security issues, we're also investing in our own capabilities, being able to do an evacuation, for instance, being able to step in the Balkan if there is more instability there. And these are important steps, but the honest answer to your question is, not yet, but we're working on it.
Trump is a reason for going in a strong way, in a Europe strong way. I mean, that's an easy answer. Okay, it's an easy answer, not the easy way.
Any last thoughts from the panelists on security beyond Europe and China?
Well, only perhaps just to thank also the person who asked the question, because I think it's very important to see just that. If you look at the South, the security issue that in the Sahel region, we don't have an answer to that, but we cannot close our eyes to it. And it's related to Russia, because it's also Wagner who is active in that part of the world. And if we just let them get away with it, our problem is becoming bigger. The Middle East is still unstable. We have to engage. The Pacific, China has been mentioned, of course, but also North Korea. It concerns us because it's also about our values, our liberal values, our belief in that we have to have open seas to engage in trade with that part of the world. So it's extremely important to talk about that, and we're not doing enough of that at the moment. And perhaps it's too much to ask of people, because of course the war in Ukraine is first and foremost on the top of mind of everybody. But this insecurity in the rest of the world does need our attention.
Thank you very much. And I got the message from the audience that we should do more of these, and perhaps a wider scope as well. Thank you to my distinguished panelists. It's been an honor talking with you today. And we are very proud in ALDE Party that our prime ministers and leaders have stood by Ukraine from the beginning. We will continue to do so. Slava Ukraini. Thank you all for your time.
Героям слава.
And I see a lot of you are getting up. Please don't leave or don't go too far. We have a debate coming up on the Green Deal next. stay tuned. Yeah, can we have... yeah, let's...
Die wären in einem Jahr. After a Russian defeat. I don't think that Russia will be defeated.
They were very good leaders, and they dealt with a lot of